Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bump and Run podcast. I'm your host, Matt Chaffe. Joining me today is Andrew Wisdom, Gary, Owen, and Jay Cook for the week of March 11th, 2019. ISM Raceway in the books. Classic short track race, in my opinion, but I want to know your guys' thoughts. Andrew, we'll start with you. What you think about Phoenix?
If you're talking about ISM Raceway,
Wow.
Not Phoenix. I don't know. Let's just move the finish line and call it a different track. But it was, I don't know. I thought it was kind of meh, but it didn't help that my driver screwed up everything that there was to screw up throughout the entire race. But I think overall the ending was kind of good. I didn't really think Truex was going to catch Kyle Busch at the end. I don't think he had enough time or enough pace. But, I mean, overall I guess it was an interesting race. It seemed like this year more than ever, people were being extremely aggressive on cutting the dog leg. Like, I mean, I don't really remember seeing people go all the way down to the wall quite as much as what they did this year. So I think maybe the extra downforce was just adding a little more security, maybe. But I don't know. I thought it was good.
Mr. Gary Owen on YouTube, what are your thoughts?
I thought it was a mediocre race. I think the racing at ISM Raceway reminded me a lot of the racing that we usually see at a track like Phoenix Raceway. It's just similar to any old races there, and I kind of expected Kyle Busch to run up front. I was surprised that Harvick wasn't as good as he was, but it was like I said, it's a mediocre race. The restarts were pretty majestic, though, I will say. So that was nice to see, but yeah, overall, I mean, typical ISM Raceway race.
All right, Jay, what do you think about Phoenix?
I found it to be a little bit more crazy of a race there than usual. The restarts, and there was a lot of them. The restarts were insane, and I think that's going to be something all year, no matter what track we're at with this high downforce package. People are just going to be taking it, 3 and 4 wide at every single track, trying to get as many spots as they can. So I think the restarts were probably the most entertaining part of the race. And then once they got going, it still wasn't as bad. They were able to run each other down and pass each other. So I thought it was overall a better race than usual, but it still could have been better.
Yeah, so with my thoughts on Phoenix, so obviously this time last year, they were still in the old configuration of Phoenix. And it wasn't until the fall race when they raced on the new configuration. I did not think the new configuration would change how the racing was at Phoenix. I mean, as the race progressed, it's any normal Phoenix event. But because of where the start and finish line is located, I did not expect drivers to be cutting the dog leg so much. I didn't expect drivers to go in the apron in the newly named turns 1 and 2. It was just really cool to see cars fan out like that. And even in the fall, we had a lot of fanning out through turns 1 and 2, through the dog leg. But I feel like with more downforce, drivers were getting way more aggressive. I mean, we saw 5 wide. I think there was at one point it was like 6 wide. I don't know how they survived, but they stayed packed for quite a bit, quite a long time, even down the back stretch, going into turns 3 and the newly named turns 3 and 4. Very packed, very exciting. And I mentioned this last week after Las Vegas. I didn't think many drivers would cut the dog leg due to the splitter being so huge. And apparently it wasn't that big of an issue. A lot of drivers were going pretty aggressive through that dog leg. So it's cool to see that the bigger splitter didn't really affect drivers, hitting the transitions of the track. Overall, I mean, it was, it wasn't terrible. I know people are going to say, oh, the racing wasn't close, it wasn't packed. But yeah, it goes back to things I've said in the past where the racing doesn't need to be packed to be exciting. I don't know which one of you mentioned it, but yeah, even at the end there, like Truex was catching Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch at the end, so if Kyle Busch ran out of fuel, it seemed like Truex was in, contention. You had guys like Almirola who tried to get up there, I think took 2 tires on his final stop, tried to, rebound from mistakes and get back up to the front. You had Austin Dillon make a 2-tire move, or maybe no tires, either fuel only or 2 tires, but a lot of different strategies, but all in all, it was a good race in general. It seems like, every short track we go to, it provides good action. And I think, Phoenix was good. And yeah, Phoenix wasn't the greatest with the higher downforce, but it did seem like a lot of drivers were able to push the limits. All right, let's narrow it down to some topics. First up, we have to talk about the qualifying incident between Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell. So if you don't know the scenario on what happened, apparently a lot of drivers waited to the last handful of minutes to qualify in the first round at ISM Raceway. That involved a lot of cars, a lot of drivers being very close to each other, trying to run a lap. Two of them, which would be Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell. And apparently, Michael McDowell was either starting a lap or coming off a pit road, and Daniel Suarez was on his second lap. And I guess Michael McDowell held up Daniel Suarez. And I haven't really seen footage of it. Only really seen the fight, but I guess Suarez tried to wreck McDowell or something once the timer expired, and they tried to enter pits. Obviously, when they got on pit road, Daniel Suarez got out of his car, walked through the infield, walked towards Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell, first off, had his helmet on, and it seemed like Suarez was just going to go over there to talk, but Michael McDowell threw both of his hands at him, just like Jeff Gordon did with Matt Kenseth at Bristol a while back. And boy, did Daniel Suarez show Michael McDowell who was stronger, I guess. So why don't you guys' thoughts on the whole fight, qualifying and whatnot, and your guys' reaction to that?
I thought it was great. It was very entertaining, and it brought a lot of attention to qualifying, which you hardly ever see. Mm-hmm. And I think we might get more of that this year if qualifying stays the way it is, with everybody waiting until 2 minutes to go out and try and make 2 laps. You're going to have people getting in each other's way and beating and banging on each other to get a qualifying lap in. And so we're either going to see probably some wrecks or, more fights like that, or maybe even a rule change if the drivers keep complaining to NASCAR that everybody's having the same strategy, which it's not NASCAR's fault. It's all these drivers wanting to wait until the last second to go out and make a lap, and then when they get screwed up, they want to be mad about it.
I loved it. That fight was awesome. I mean, I see why both drivers were angry, but fighting, I don't like violence, but I love fighting in sports, so I'm for it, and I think we need more of it personally. But yeah, I see why both drivers were angry, because there was some footage shown of they used almost like a race view to show part of it where Suarez was on his hot lap and McDowell clearly cut him off and screwed up his lap, and he held him up in the next corner as well. And then so I see why Suarez was angry with what happened. And then they also had some camera footage. Suarez certainly got in the way of McDowell, so I saw why they were both angry, and it was. I might be a little biased because Suarez is one of my favorite drivers, but he certainly handed McDowell what he had. But I'm for it, and I kind of agree with what Jay said about qualifying. I think that maybe there's a slim chance we could see more of this, because qualifying has been pretty interesting so far this season, and hopefully there's not a rule change though, because I think this is something we need, because if we go back to single car qualifying or something, it's going to be terrible. So either way, I love the fight.
Yeah, I have nothing wrong with the fight. I do have a problem with the one guy who I think was on the Ford team, was one of the Ford, I don't know if he's on McDowell's team or just a Ford engineer in general for the whole Ford camp. But he came over to Daniel Suarez and basically grabbed his neck, threw him on the hood of, was it McDowell's crew chief?
It was Drew Blickensderfer, which is his crew chief.
Oh, I didn't realize it was Drew. I felt like I would have noticed that too, since he was on roll as crew chief back at RPI. I didn't notice at all. He wasn't wearing wearing a fire suit at the time or anything, or a shirt that showed the 34 or the 34 sponsors. But okay, well, in that case, yeah, Drew came over and just chokeholded him basically and put him on the hood, and I had a big problem with that. I was like, geez, that was a little bit more physical than I thought it got. Some people even mentioned that none of the Smithfield guys came over to try to break it up, which I was really surprised about. I have no problem with the fight, just, yeah, maybe Drew, I think, shouldn't have done that. it's a little too hard. And if someone grabs my neck, that's the most annoying thing. I think I've seen in any NASCAR fights. It's really uncalled for. There's no reason to chokehold a guy really, other than maybe just grab his arms and pin him somewhere. But either way, I have no problem with that. I also have no problem with what happened on track. I mean, yeah, I have a problem with Michael McDowell, and I also have a problem with Daniel Suarez attempting to wreck him because, if that's your car that you're going to use in the race, a lot of time and effort was put into that car. So, but I mean, that's how qualifying works. Drivers wait to the last second. And so, of course, this is going to happen. I think even Larry McReynolds said, before the race started on Fox's race day coverage, he even mentioned, he's like, it's really the fault of the teams and the drivers waiting to the last second to run a qualifying lap. So, of course, drama like that is going to ensue.
I think Suarez won that damn fight. That's what I think. I didn't get to see, so I was at work when all this happened, so all I really could see about the incident itself on track is what people were kind of able to post a clip of on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. So I don't really have a whole lot to say about the on-track incident, but Suarez is the medicine that NASCAR needs right now because people are mad or upset or complaining about literally everything. And then you take a sport that basically blew up because of a fight on their first national television broadcast. And so, basically, in my opinion, has fallen away from that over the years and has become too, I don't want to say politically correct or something, but it's kind of become too, people have had a little bit too much manners, I guess, in my opinion, over the last few years in NASCAR. And so to have Suarez come over and be that heated, and not only did McDowell throw the first punch, but Suarez made sure that he didn't throw another one. And then just the interview afterwards, where Suarez was just kind of like, I will show you respect as long as you respect me back, but if you don't, I'll come kick your ass. I think that's the kind of driver, or the kind of attitude that NASCAR needs right now. So I think maybe he gained quite a few fans on Friday. I think I'm one of them. I always liked Suarez. I was always, hope that he would succeed, but I'm definitely, you'll say, more tempted to buy a 41 hat than ever just because of that incident. But I think, regardless of whose side you're on, I think that entire incident hopefully put a little more pep in the step for NASCAR.
For
got
sure.
people a little bit more passionate and heated about things.
I do think that as a sport, NASCAR needs to find, I don't know if they don't necessarily need to create a Dale Earnhardt 2.0, but there needs to be a driver that comes in and basically takes over what Dale Earnhardt did, because a lot of the popularity in NASCAR came when Dale Earnhardt was popular and he was going out and he would move people out of the way to get a win. He would do what it takes to win, and he would handle whatever he needed to handle off track. And we haven't had a personality like that in NASCAR since his accident. And so, I think that would bring a lot of flair and a lot of fire and a lot of personality and a lot of things back to NASCAR if we can get, somebody with a personality like that. But also,
some people argue it's Kyle Busch.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, that is true. But the way his personality to people is people see him as a crybaby, not somebody who's going to wreck you to win, and somebody who's just going to be a badass. People think
I look at him as he'd wreck someone to win.
Yeah, I don't see too much.
I don't know. You look at Chicago,
physical
though,
content with Kyle Busch.
It's okay.
He can say what he wants to say and whatnot, but there is a difference between Dale Earnhardt Sr. actually doing stuff on track. For Kyle Busch, yes, he's done stuff in the past, but even looking at Phoenix, he has a good car. He's not going to risk it. He's not going to wreck like Ryan Blaney per se. It depends. It depends on the era. Depends on the fans, what they want to see. And I think every driver does has that personality. But a good point that you guys brought up is Suarez, he has that respect kind of thing. If you respect me, I'll respect you back. If you don't, then expect me to dump you the next time I see you or move you out of the way. I see too many Mr. Nice guys at the field. And, maybe that will change. The more people start to race each other, race hard, then, then we will see more tempers flaring without, trying to artificially create drama. So, like I said, it really just depends on the era, depends on what happens. Obviously, and part of it may come down to the package, how close people race. I think this is the first race all season where it's been pretty close, and it's a little bit more intense. So, and this, this incident flared up after qualifying. It really all depends.
I guess basically the point I was trying to bring up is we need more drivers who are not going to take people's crap. If they're gonna bump into them, they're gonna bump you back, and if you're gonna wreck them, they're gonna wreck you back, and all that kind of stuff. So I mean,
okay, well, I'll start
we
to
need
say
more
Chicago.
no-nonsense
That actually
drivers.
brings Kyle Busch. He wasn't gonna touch Larson for that. If Larson would not have touched Kyle Busch would not have touched Larson, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think
Kyle Busch.
He talks a tough talk, but I think when it comes down to it, he is smart enough that he knows he needs to take care of the car until the last possible minute. That he will not do anything stupid.
I don't think he wants to wreck somebody else either and make them have a big cost of a wrecked car and everything like that. But if they bump you, that basically tells him, all right, I can bump you back now.
Yeah, it's fair game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think he talks a little bit tougher than he is on track, but I feel like I said, part of that is that he knows he just needs to conserve the car. I mean, Kyle... I don't know how else to say it. We are talking about somebody that got moved for a win by Carl Edwards. All right, Carl Edwards didn't really move people, but he moved Kyle out the way. So,
and he had the whole
Kyle
ordeal with Brad Keselowski too. He's turned Brad Keselowski both
That went on for like 4
at
years.
Gateway and the Xfinity
if your name
Series.
is not Brad Keselowski, though, you're probably not going to get moved by Carl. Brad was pretty much the exception to the rule. So,
Yeah, Brad
but
and Carl had that.
But even a guy like Carl, doesn't matter. A guy like Carl is kind of like a guy like Daniel Suarez, who you would come across as being a nice guy, or even Eric Almirola for that matter.
That is true.
It's a guy who you don't expect to get into an argument, and here you are, like, they're getting physical. Well, Carl Edwards was very physical on track, and here Suarez is obviously getting to that point.
Yeah, I don't want on pit road, but
yeah, I mean, again, it depends. It depends on the era too. Again, obviously, I think there are those personalities. It's just what do the fans, kind of, see some kind of connection to, compared to them to the driver. Suarez, I think, is definitely one of those guys. And just for the incident that took place, and I think more can happen. It's just something needs to happen. I don't think there's enough going on in these races for something to spark. Like that did, at the qualifying session.
I think another thing that NASCAR needs is they had the Dale Sr. and Jeff Gordon rivalry that went on for years, and the fans literally hated each other. I think NASCAR needs. It would be nice to see a rivalry like that again between two drivers. And I don't know if we ever will get something like that again, but it'd be really nice to, see two drivers who are just, if they get on a track next to each other, there's going to be drama created. And you have those hardcore fan bases of each one that go after each other and all that. So
Right.
that'd be a nice thing to see eventually someday.
All right, let's talk about another thing. I feel like it's not new to Phoenix, but Goodyear still had some issues this race. I think the first one was Eric Jones blew a right rear and spun out through turns 1 and 2. Did a good job at saving it, and it was shown live too. It happened right there, right when they cut to one of the cameras on the side of the track. You also had Alex Bowman with some tire issues. Brad Keselowski had some tire issues. I can't name too many others, but there's quite a handful of drivers with tire issues. I don't really know what's causing it. I don't know how much we can blame Goodyear, but obviously we've had issues this season already with the joke that Goodyear can't hold air, that Goodyear tires are kind of trash. What is Goodyear's issue? Is it the team's still going too far, still going extreme with tire pressures? Is it just Goodyear's bringing the wrong tire to the track? What's kind of the whole issue? And I say maybe not new because I feel like there have been a lot of Phoenix races where there's been a lot of tires that blow out. But what are your guys' thoughts on at least this race and the Goodyear troubles?
I don't know how to approach this because obviously there seems like there's always some sort of problem with the Goodyears, at least, in NASCAR. Like, I'm pretty sure I seen somewhere this week, I don't remember if somebody reported on it or not, but I'm pretty sure this week that Goodyear issued a warning to all of the teams about tire pressures and that these tires could give pretty easily due to the increased downforce and the increased speed if they push their pressures too far. So although we had these incidents, I don't really recall hearing anybody complain about the tires being bad. So I'm going to lean more towards the fact that the teams were probably just pushing too far. They probably knew it by the time something went wrong because, like I said, Goodyear, whether they need to bring a stronger tire, a harder tire, or whatever they need to do, whether they needed to bring something different or not, they did issue that warning. And we didn't really have any complaints even after there were problems. So I'm just going to say that the teams were probably pushing it too much.
I think Andrew's probably right on that one. I think the teams probably are at fault for maybe pushing it a little bit too far, but I felt like that the tires did better this time around in Phoenix than what they have in the past. Because, I mean, how many tire blows did we have? Maybe 4 or 5, somewhere in there? Like, it felt like in past races we've had almost double the amount of that in some of the races. So I felt like Goodyear has made an improvement, but, I mean, I'm not a tire expert, so I couldn't really go in too much to say maybe what they're doing wrong, but I think Andrew's probably more on being right. I think it's just the teams maybe pushing it too far.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well, because if you look at the tire issues from yesterday, the teams had more than one issue. It was the same team having more than one issue. So Bowman, I think, had 2 issues with it. Maybe it was because of his damage on the second one, or maybe it was because of their tire pressures. I think there might have been one other driver that had 2 different tire issues. And so I feel like it is with the pressures. It could be maybe the Goodyear didn't come prepared with a good enough bead to handle the brake temperatures since they were going a little bit faster on the straightaways. It could be that maybe, but I feel like the majority of it is on the teams for not handling or not going with what Goodyear wants them to do with the tire pressures.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely not a Goodyear issue. People can say all they want, Goodyear can't make a tire. I think they can. I mean, NASCAR wouldn't have them as their main tire supplier, even if they're having these issues. There's even the issue with, I think it was with Brad Keselowski or something. They wound up, Larry McReynolds brought up the Ford cutaway car, virtual cutaway car, and talked about some of the suspension arms and things in the front right of the car, or just the front of the car in general, and kind of talking about how if you have really low tire pressures, there's a good chance the tire could have bulged out and rubbed on a part. He said there's a good chance that if the tire was, low on pressure, it was probably rubbing up against it. Anything could really be a factor. I heard that Goodyear did bring a pretty hard tire compound to this race, knowing that these cars had a lot more downforce, which means that Goodyear didn't need to supply a very grippy tire, or even a tire that wore that much. I mean, honestly, with hearing that, it's definitely teams are probably going a little bit extreme on tire pressures, to make them blow. I really don't think that harder compound would, really. I mean, maybe the compound doesn't matter. Just all in all, yeah, it comes down to the teams, really, for all the tire blown situations. All right, so most of the cautions that came out at the Cup race this weekend were because of those blown tires. There's very few spins. There was one I can think of, I think it was with Ryan Preece, who got loose coming out of turn 2. Actually, funny enough, Suarez was there, and Suarez accidentally clipped him, sent Preece to the wall. And other than that, I can't think of any big wrecks that happened during the Cup race. But one odd spin that happened was Chase Elliott's spin, which was middle of stage, the final stage, wasn't it?
I think it was the final stage.
Okay. Yeah, was stage there.
It was somewhere in the middle of the final stage. Chase Elliott spun, and honestly don't think there were too many. Well, I personally didn't think there was much to think about from it, especially from watching the replays, but I guess there have been some fake headlines to it, whether or not the spin was maybe purposeful, kind of like the Spingate incident with Clint Boyer back at Richmond 2013.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. All right, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I don't know about the... All right, I gotta go first. Chase screwed up everything that there was to screw up at ISM Raceway, but let me tell you one thing. The NASCAR really reached on their headline on their website. So Chase went out in like the middle of stage 3. I don't know that there were too many allegations that he did it on purpose, because more than anything, he needed to move up, and a caution really wasn't going to help him, because after he spun, he went from like, I think roughly around the top 10, like maybe just outside of it, to like outside the top 20. So that, I don't think he could have even remotely thought that would help him in any way, because he basically kind of screwed the rest of his race over because of it. But the headline on, I think it was on NASCAR's website, it could have been on like Fox's website or NBC's or whatever, but it was like one of the official like news sites where like they upload like the clips and all that stuff and like do like the short little, you know, articles or whatever. The headline was, Chase Elliott spins while racing near Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin had literally nothing to do with that spin. Like, they weren't even, like, close enough for that to even matter. Denny wouldn't have done it on purpose anyway, because after the 2017 incident at Martinsville, and then Chase got his payback at Phoenix, those two have raced each other clean. I don't think there's any ongoing beef about it or whatever. Obviously, there is between the fans. Like, I think it was Ricky Stenhouse was the first one to bring it up on Twitter, and he was like, NASCAR is really reaching for that one. And Chase like got on there and was like sarcastically replying to it. He's like, yeah, old Dennis spun me again. And it was like, he put like that emoji like it looks like you're rolling your eyes or whatever. But it's just like, even to Chase and Denny and all the other drivers, like, it was just a joke of how far of a reach that headline was, because there was literally no other driver that had anything to do with that spin other than Chase just either overdrove it or had some sort of little issue or what. I don't know whatever happened, but we'll say unless something broke, which I don't really think anything too major broke, obviously, because he was able to continue on, but we'll say odds are Chase probably just overdrove it. But the fact that they felt the need to try to incorporate Denny Hamlin just because he was on the same racetrack basically was just kind of disgraceful, to be honest.
At this point, it seems like NASCAR is going to use any headline they could possibly use to get the fans' attraction. I can't recall any off the top of my head, but I have seen them in the past where I'm reading the title, I'm like, yeah, right, that's the most stupid title you can ever give that article or that incident. Yeah, because even looking at all the replays, it seemed as if, in the broadcast, they were thinking there was maybe some oil in the track or water on the track, but even that seemed a little too absurd. And it definitely seemed like Chase kind of just, messed up the entry to 3 or was definitely having a tire go down. I think Chase had a loose tire. I think they confirmed a few laps before that. Chase was coming on the radio, they were talking, and they said that there's a good chance Chase had a loose tire because, he was having, or he just felt it. He just felt the tire was coming loose. And it even seemed like from all those from the onboard from Denny Hamlin's car, or whoever was behind him, it seemed like Chase his car got out of shape. He tried to hang on to it. He did a good job trying to hang on to it and then just, spun the thing out in 4. Thankfully, no one hit him or anything like that. But yeah, to make a fake headline that Denny Hamlin spun him's pretty absurd, and that, it was just a matter of Chase Elliott either having a tire going down or his tire was just loose, couldn't hang on to it. So definitely a situation that shouldn't have been over-talked, really. Should have just been like any normal, accidental spin, and everyone could have moved on with their life. So, all right, so the final thing I'm going to talk about Phoenix. Everyone's been bringing up Kyle Busch reaching under 99 wins. Well, not in the Cup Series, but in the combination of the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. Obviously, everyone keeps talking about this. Whether or not we compare Kyle Busch's, when he gets to 200 wins, when we compare Kyle Busch's 200 wins to the accomplishment that Richard Petty had with his 200 wins just in the Cup Series. So what are your guys' thoughts on that comparison? First off, it's crazy to have Kyle Busch, go out there and be so dominant. It's kind of, hands down, every time he's in the Truck or Xfinity Series, he's going to be really dominant, really fast. When you get to the Cup level, though, it's kind of out of his control, at certain occasions. He has to really, compete with, higher-end teams. I mean, we see that at Atlanta and Las Vegas, where he seemed to have a good fast car, but then Penske coming around and being the fastest of the fastest, and Kyle Busch struggling. So even he said too, it's like it's kind of ridiculous for him to finally sweep at Phoenix, which he should have done at Las Vegas. And I completely agree. I think Kyle Busch had the fastest car at Las Vegas and could have swept that weekend. But Kyle Busch is just dominant. He's definitely, a really good driver here in modern NASCAR. But what are your guys' thoughts on the whole comparison between Richard Petty's 200 wins and Kyle Busch eventually getting 200 wins in the series overall?
Okay, so I have a lot to say about this one. I think that 200 wins for Kyle Busch and 200 wins for Richard Petty are both a lot different, and they both deserve to be in their own categories, but neither one of them, in my opinion, are considered to be the top winners in NASCAR, because Kyle Petty did it, or Kyle Petty, Jesus Christ.
Petty.
Richard Petty did it during a time in NASCAR when they ran like 60 races a year, when they ran on, different, when you had different competitors each weekend, you weren't up against the same people, and when he was just in the top equipment and he was able to just go out and beat everybody, just beat everybody. Kyle Busch kind of the same thing a little bit, not so much in the Cup Series. He's earned those wins in the Cup Series, but I don't consider any of his wins most of his wins in the Truck or Xfinity Series to go towards his total win total, because most of the time he is in top tier equipment that nobody else can outrun, and he just goes in and just cruises around, leads every lap, and wins the race. I don't think that should count towards his total career wins. I think only the Cup Series wins should, and I don't think it should be considered that he has the most wins in NASCAR, because he's gonna blow 200 total away across all three series. He's gonna blow that out of the water. But I don't think he should be considered as having the most wins in NASCAR.
I kind of agree with Shane. It's so hard to me, to compare them, because they are dominating in two complete different eras. And two really different competition levels, at least in the Cup Series. But either way, no matter what, 200 wins or 199 for Kyle Busch, no matter what, that is insanely impressive for every series combined. I think the closest driver to him it might be Kevin Harvick, and he's at just over 100 or something like that. So either way, it's still impressive, and I find it, though, to be honest, more impressive than Richard Petty, because the competition levels, in every series, I feel are much higher than what they would have been. So, Kyle Busch, I feel like I think he's a better driver than Richard Petty. Personally, I think there's quite a few drivers that are much better than Richard Petty, and he just kind of like what Jay said, he had a lot less competition back in the day and in the best car, which allowed him to dominate. So that's how I feel about that.
I just feel like you cannot compare the two. It's pretty much what we've said already. You have to put them in their own class. Jay brought up a good point about him when he runs in the lower series, kind of running in top tier equipment that most people can't outrun. But even when I think about that, the most interesting part to me is I don't really know why he runs in the lower series. I guess I don't know if it's to boost the win total, if it's just for practice, or what, because it's not like he's going down there with other Cup drivers to see if he can beat the other Cup drivers over the course of the weekend. There's times where he's the only Cup driver in the field, and he just goes down there, and either Gibbs will provide him a great car, or he'll buy his own truck or whatever else, bring his own truck, and he'll just, like you said, just dominate, lead most of, if not every lap, and kind of cruise to a victory. So I don't really know, other than maybe just for the sake of practice, that's really helping, because if he goes into it basically knowing that he should be, there's no reason for him not to win the race unless there's something that deliberately goes wrong. I don't really know. I don't know if I agree with saying that it shouldn't count, because a win's a win no matter how you get it. But with Richard Petty too, I don't remember if it was I seen it on Race Hub this week, or if they said it during the broadcast. It was one of the two. But somebody said, Richard Petty's 200 wins came in the Cup Series against the best people in the day that were willing to show up with their cars. But to me, that doesn't really mean anything either, because even if a modern example, say you want to make your own racing series that anybody and everybody can show up to with a set of regulations. Say somebody's willing to show up and bring a brand new Lamborghini Aventador every week. And then there's the rest of the competition is willing to show up in the very best version of a Chevy Cavalier every single week. Well, obviously the Lamborghini is going to win that race. regardless of whether the people in the Chevy Cavaliers are bringing their best car or not. The car is just simply better, and it may or may not take the best driver in the field to win races with it. So I don't know how you can compare them. I don't know that really one should even be held above the other, because if you really want to examine it and try to compare it, you can easily find faults in both arguments when you're trying to say that one is better than the other. If I'm going to argue the best driver in NASCAR, I'm either going to say that it's going to be Dale Earnhardt or Jeff Gordon. Like, Kyle Busch and Richard Petty don't really come to mind for me. And I think Kyle will, as he accumulates more Cup wins over time, because he still has a lot of time left in his career in the Cup Series. So if he starts getting in the 80s and the 90s and the wins, I think Kyle Busch will definitely start to join that conversation. But I don't think, as of right now, at least for me, those two aren't even in my discussion for the best driver in NASCAR.
And I feel like you can't also forget Jimmie Johnson, too. A lot of people overlook him because of his championships and because, for say, the championship system changes, through all 7 of his championships. You can't really compare it at all. But your wins, you can. And especially in the modern era NASCAR, where the rules are much tighter and it's harder to get away with a lot of things to make a fast car. 2 things I want to point out is, the one is coming to the track and building a fast car. Back then, there weren't too many regulations, and you can get away with quite a bit of stuff. Now you can't. But you can still, come to the track and find ways to build a fast car. And maybe if you don't have a fast car, it takes a lot of team effort to make your car handle. A driver isn't going to be able to drive the car if it doesn't handle. So I think especially in the modern era, Kyle Busch is good at that. He's good at, getting a car to the track that's, drives pretty well. And even if there's an issue, they're able to tune on it in practice and make it work. I haven't really seen in the headlines too much as Kyle Busch being really good in practice, but it seems like he's always good in the race. Even sometimes in qualifying, he's not that good. I mean, heck, look at, the Phoenix qualifying. Blaney on the pole, Chase Elliott second. Where the hell was Kyle Busch? It's like, shouldn't Kyle Busch be out there in first? So I don't think Kyle Busch comes to the track with extremely good cars. He does come to the track with good cars, but it takes the entire weekend for him to figure it out, and it takes a good driver to set up the car. But yeah, in an era where it comes down to the driver, comes down to those adjustments, Kyle Busch is good at that. But comparing all of his wins, I don't think it's fair to say his 200 wins in all 3 series can compare to Richard Petty, and it does depend on the era. And I think Kyle Busch should just be focused on this modern era, this current era, really, in NASCAR, because it could change. We keep talking about the Gen 7 car. I think that's going to be a completely different era of NASCAR, and it's just going to keep, changing as decades go on, and we might get to another point in NASCAR where there's a new era and, wins and all that stuff is completely different. The rarity of, a huge number of wins. Think of this too. Kyle Busch runs in all 3 series. How often did guys like Jimmie Johnson or Jeff Gordon run in the other series? And that's the other point I want to give too. I think if Jeff Gordon ran as many Xfinity Series races or truck races, and same for Jimmie Johnson, if they ran as many of those races as Kyle Busch does, wouldn't we be talking about them as well being really good and having all these wins? In their careers, they didn't. Jeff Gordon focused solely on the Cup level. Jimmie Johnson focused solely on the Cup level as well. Kevin Harvick, I think, is the only guy who you really see still go down to the Xfinity Series, and even then, I think he stopped. I think he said enough is enough.
Ross discouraged him.
Sure, why not? Yeah, no one really goes down to the lower series other than Kyle Busch. So I think it's also unfair to say that, his 200 wins, really adds up because he runs in the other 2 series, but not every driver runs in the other 2 series. So I think it'd be easy to compare him if there was another driver who was very dominant in the other two series besides Cup. And Kyle Busch is the only guy who can dominate in all because of his equipment, because of, his driver's skill. So I don't know. I mean, I think, what really matters is his Cup wins. The whole point of the Chuck and Xfinity series is to get those drivers up to the Cup level. And so shouldn't the Cup level be, the numbers and the stats you want standing out? Honestly, I feel like the stat of having 200 wins overall in Cup, Xfinity, and Truck is a joke. Because, like, Andrew, you mentioned it too. Like, what's the point of Kyle even going down to the lower series? Is it just to rank up the wins? I mean, he did get the most, driver with the most Truck wins in history. So maybe he could be going for that, and kind of going for that in the Xfinity series. But is there a point to it? I don't know. So, I think in two ways it's unfair to compare him to Richard Petty, but it's also unfair since he seems to be the only driver going across 3 series. And there's no other driver really that's been good in the Cup level that goes down to the other 2 series and just plainly dominates. I mean, even Kevin Harvick, when he went down the Xfinity series, he didn't just dominate every race he was in. It's definitely a discussion that's going to be a heated topic for a lot of people, but I think once he reaches his 200 wins, which he could possibly do this coming weekend at Auto Club, I don't think there should be a really big deal to it. I think what matters more is his Cup wins. And once he gets to the same number of Cup wins as Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson surpasses those numbers, then I would consider Kyle Busch a very talented driver in the modern era of NASCAR. But counting his wins in Xfinity and Truck, I don't think it matters. I really don't. Once he reaches 200 wins, I don't think anyone should really celebrate. And even Kyle Busch said it, I think, himself. It's a cool milestone, but I think he also wants to focus on just ranking up the Cup wins, and focusing on those Cup stats.
One thing, too, is I just want to say real quickly, I feel like also in this entire discussion, we're leaving out championships. Mm-hmm. Kyle Busch only has 1 Cup championship.
And I don't believe he has any championships in the lower series.
So if you look at Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt, championships. Although there's different formats and things that people agree and don't agree with about how the championship is decided, drivers, part of their ability has to be adaptability, so that they can change according to whatever situation that they have to drive in. And if, some people think that Kyle Busch is a better driver than drivers in the past, and that the only reason he doesn't have championships to show of it is kind of the you just gotta win at Homestead situation, so be it. But I feel like you have to take into account that no matter what the format is, the drivers have to be the best, better than everybody else around them at the time to win the championship. Mm-hmm. When it comes down to it. So I feel like Kyle also along the way, and I could, definitely think it's a possibility, but I think he needs to get 2, maybe 3 more championships under his belt before he's kind of considered one of the all-time greats. But I'd say at least probably a couple more.
Alrighty, so that'll be it from our ISM Raceway topics. Let's go into our pit stop segment. And Andrew, you're the one who brought this up. From a conversation he had with his mother. But the topic is, this is going back to the Suarez incident, but do we need more guys like Suarez? Or specifically, do we need, quote-unquote, good role models for the kids, or for the young fans in NASCAR? It's an interesting topic. Interested to hear what you guys have to say. Andrew, I think we'll save you for last. We'll save you for last on this one since you're the one that came up with that. So, we'll start with Mr. Gary Owen. You're going to have 30 seconds on the clock to give your thoughts and opinions on the following topic. Do we need more guys like Suarez? Specifically, do we need good role models for the sport? So go ahead, your 30 seconds starts now.
Yes, we do need more guys like Daniel Suarez, and I look at that as being a good role model because he doesn't let people push him around and run over him. He defends himself, and I look at that as good for being a role model.
Wow, I didn't even need 30 seconds. Is anyone timing this?
Yeah, I'm on a new cellular device this week, though, so we'll see how... I have no idea what sound is going to play when this ends, so be warned.
All right, Jay, we'll go with you next. 30 seconds. What do you think?
I think that we do need more drivers like Suarez. I mean, I don't think you can say just because he got into a fight one time that would be a bad role model. Suarez is one of the nicest guys in the garage, and he even said himself, I'm only going to act like that if you don't show me the respect that I show you. So I feel like, yeah, more drivers like Suarez would be a great thing.
We weren't even close. Matt, you need to talk a lot so I can see what this sounds like.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong, really, with all the fights. You know, the fights is what, you know, kind of grew NASCAR. And, you know, the people joke, you know, sport's really built on fights. But, you know, no, I mean, we do have a good amount of good role models in NASCAR. And I think, you know, it's a sport, you know, there's a lot of other sports out there where there's always fighting, always arguments. So, of course, I think we need to keep it. But I feel like we do have enough good role models.
Okay, that's actually not as bad as I thought it was, but I need to turn that up. Okay. So, I pretty much agree with what you guys are saying. I think that Suarez getting into one fight is not going to make him a bad role model, and I think that, like I said earlier in the podcast, that him getting into that fight and saying what he said about respect, that's pretty much exactly what the sport needs as well. But I feel like kind of even as a society in general, people are kind of like they're willing to be pushed around to avoid conflict. So I think it's good to see a driver, an athlete that is willing to stand up for themselves.
Yeah, I like that too. Right on the dot. That'll be the end of the pit stop segment here for episode 5 of the Bump and Run podcast. Well, let's go ahead and talk about Auto Club because that is next, and we are sadly leaving our very nice 750 horsepower back down to 550. I have no idea if the brake ducts or the air ducts are coming on the cars. Yikes. I'm not too sure. Maybe I should look that up. But yeah, let's talk about Auto Club. What do you guys think we're going to see at Auto Club after, specifically after we've seen the races at Atlanta and Las Vegas? How should we compare them to Auto Club?
I don't know, man. Have the trucks gone? Do they go, or have they ever gone to Auto Club?
That's a good question.
They don't go anymore.
They don't. Yeah, they don't go anymore.
So I don't really know what to compare it to. I don't know what to. I don't know what. I don't remember what the. I think the speeds were they still around 200 at least going down to turn 195.
So here's a weird thing. I asked someone because they posted a video on YouTube and they were saying they seem to be going pretty fast through one. The guy responded saying he thinks they were going 200, but I'm not going to take his word for it. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to tell by eyesight. Like I feel like when you get to a certain speed, it's just like fast looks fast. Like
I remember them saying that they were getting around 200. I feel like I remember the driver Suarez and Logano. I think it was Truex who was there. They were talking about they were getting around 200 into turn 1.
Okay, so I mean, as long as they're still getting their straightaway speed, I think that's the biggest thing. With the downforce, I'm not going to make any predictions, but I'll say that I hope that when the tires start to wear, that we can still see the multi-groove racing. Because like Auto Club, I feel like one of the greatest things about it that you would see with the lower downforce cars is that you would have a car running down to the grass on the apron and a guy running all the way up against the wall trying to pass each other for position, and both lines worked. So I still hope we can see that to a degree once the tires start to wear, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm just going to say that I hope that the track isn't, I'll say, too big for the package in the sense that they're not going to be forced to stay glued to the bottom if they want to keep their position.
I might be really, really, really wrong on this, but I'm going to say that it's going to be like 4 wide the entire time. I don't know if it'll be exactly 4 wide the entire time, but I feel like it'll be people running multiple grooves. They're going to be in a pack, and it could be a pretty crazy race. Because, I mean, even though we thought that might happen at Vegas or Atlanta or even some of the tracks later in the season, Auto Club, that already happened before without the high downforce, and now they're going to have the better cornering speed than they had before. And with the rough and bumpy surface and old surface, I feel like it's going to create people being able to run multiple grooves in a pack, and I think it could be either a crazy race or it could be everybody just kind of has their own room and they pass each other all the time and nothing really happens.
All right, I just want to say, first of all, that I've been on here 2 times, and I predicted how the races were going to be, and I felt like I was correct on both. I said Las Vegas wasn't going to be a pack race. I was right on that. And I said Phoenix was probably going to be your typical Phoenix race, and I felt like I was right on that. So I think this weekend is going to be almost have some elements from like Atlanta, where on like starts and restarts are going to stay packed up. I feel like they could maybe stay packed up for like 6-7-ish laps. I think they might last, and then they're going to start to break up again with more as like the tires start wearing. And I feel like it's going to be, like I said, kind of similar to Atlanta. Like they're going to be maybe just a little bit closer together than Atlanta, but I feel like there's still going to be an element of them getting spread out.
Yeah, I don't know where I stand on this, because Auto Club also has a really old and bumpy surface, and it's very worn out. And I know at I know at Atlanta, a lot of drivers were still fighting with handling issues, even though you have a ton of downforce and the power wasn't really high. So I feel like that's still going to be an issue at Auto Club for some weird reason. I don't know how. I could just still see, handling issues at Auto Club, which in turn wouldn't really pack the field up. It really depends on momentum. And I completely agree on your point, Gary, on how it could potentially be an Atlanta race where the restarts are probably really good. They're close. They're crazy. I think they'll be insanely crazy because of how wide Auto Club is, but I do not see how the racing could be packed for so long. It really depends on momentum with the 550 horsepower and the amount of downforce we have. I could easily see these restarts being where if you're backed up in traffic, you're forced to let off the throttle, which means when you get back on the throttle, it's going to take a long time for you to get, bring the power back up, bring the revs back up. And like I said, we don't know how they're going to take the corners either. We don't know if they're going to be like Atlanta, or they're going to maybe have some, handling issues. I don't really know. But I do see it as being, I think it will spread out. It will get spread out. And sure, you'll get the runs. You'll get the drivers trying the very high side by the wall. You'll see drivers run the apron, especially through 3 and 4. But I think because it takes so much time for you to build the revs back up with 550 horsepower, that it's going to be tough for them to stay packed up. I'd be surprised if it's grouped up the entire time, but I don't know. I think the answer is if they had 750 horsepower, then maybe they could do it. I think with 550, they won't be able to. I checked just now on NASCAR.com. I didn't see anything. I would think they're running brake ducts, because I know in past Auto Club races, you're on the brakes entering the corners. And if they're still carrying 200 miles an hour through turns 1, or entering turn 1 and entering turn 3, then I could see drivers maybe using the brakes if it's necessary, especially since Auto Club is a pretty flat track compared to like Michigan and whatnot. So I don't know. I really don't know what to think. Like what you mentioned, you're basically 2 for 3 at the moment with calling the races, Gary. I still have not been able to predict the big one. I think we were close at Las Vegas, but we hadn't seen the big one at Las Vegas or Atlanta. If it does get crazy, I feel like it could happen at Auto Club, really, for how crazy the restarts are. But because of how wide the track is, maybe not. We'll have to see on that. I think like I mentioned before, after Las Vegas, the drivers are pretty skilled. So I think it'd be very rare if we saw a big one. Especially with all this downforce and lower horsepower. But yeah, I think it's safe to say we're kind of split on that. It's either we're going to see a lot of drafting, a lot of pack racing, or it's going to be spread out like Atlanta and Las Vegas. So I think we're both, all 4 of us, we're up in the air whether or not, any of the racing is going to, either it's going to be similar to what we've seen this season or different. I do have to bring that point up too, because even looking at the test, I don't know how many of you guys remember that 3-car test between Truex, Logano, and Suarez.
Yeah.
But it was odd how their cars reacted around one another. Like, I mean, they were making passes pretty easily in a way. I don't know, it's just weird. Because there'd be times where maybe, I think Suarez would get a huge run past Logano and Truex and make the pass, but then, he'd get swallowed up by Logano and Truex the following corner or something like that. So we could even see, the thing about Las Vegas, there's a lot of passing that happened at Las Vegas. So I don't know if we would see a number similar to that at Auto Club, where the number of passes will go up compared to previous years. Yeah, I think there's a good chance too. We even discussed, last episodes, like whether or not we count these passes or not, because it depends on the timing lines around the track. But I pointed out, I was like, well, it doesn't really matter. The number of passes is still greater, which means that drivers are able to, actually race each other compared to like having one guy pull away. So I think no matter what, we're going to see the number of passes, go up. I don't know if you guys would agree with me on that or not, but I think it will. It really does come down to whether or not it's a pack race the entire time or not.
I feel like it also could be like an old Daytona race back in the early 2000s and the 90s. It could be a race like that where you have a leader who's able to kind of pull away a little bit, and then you have a pack behind him of 10 or 15 cars that's kind of drafting, and then it gets a little spread out, but they're still kind of in a drafting type pack. So it could be something like that too.
All right, well, that will be it from us here on episode 5 of the Bump and Run podcast. Andrew, Gary, and Jay, thank you again for joining me. Hope everyone watches the races this weekend at Auto Club. And if you're a big Formula One fan, hope you guys watch the Australian Grand Prix, which we won't cover, but we will be talking about the Cup race at Auto Club. So until the next episode, see you guys next week on the Bump and Run podcast.
Bye!